The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
710 KNUS as promised. Please say good morning. Welcome to Denver, Colorado. Her name is Hillary Peete. She joins us. Ms. Peete, good morning, and welcome to Denver, and welcome to 710 KNUS. Thanks for being with us.
Yep, thank you for having me.
Yeah, a little bit about yourself. We ask folks to do this so people get a sense of who you are and why you're here. So if you would take a minute and tell the folks about yourself.
Well, a little bit. I've been, I guess, basically blogging a little bit about some of my concerns with the president and some of his documentation, some of his background, and some of his history. My point or my position is I am calling myself a low-tech analyst with regards to a lot of his documentation and the fact that
I don't mean to hesitate, but about where you live and a little bit of your background and that kind of thing. You're, by the way, you are welcome home to a proud birther. So having,
okay.
All right. So I want you to know who I am before we even begin. I've spent almost 10 years on this story. So let us begin again. If you would tell the audience who you are in terms of, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, that's kind of where I was going on that my background is basically, I've been an office manager for the past 15, 20 years in the Northeast, in general offices, so I have a lot of experience with copiers, I have a lot of experience with rubber stamps, I have a lot of experience with scanners, with Photoshop, all that kind of stuff, just from my general work background. And that's sort of where I am doing now. I'm managing an office. And
now my next question would be, and I get to ask this of the folks like yourself who are kind enough to be with us, what happened? Why did you suddenly, or maybe it wasn't sudden. Like in my case, it wasn't sudden. It was a series of things that made me realize that we have no idea who this guy is. Having said that, what were the steps for you to come to these conclusions?
I think probably, I've followed it along the entire time. And I think, when he first ran for office years ago, I was willing to give him a chance. I didn't vote for him, but I was willing to give him a chance. As the first term went on, I realized we had a problem. And it started to come a little bit into the real media, mainstream media, that there was an issue with the birth certificate. And at that point, I did look at it and start to wonder about it. And again, I kind of pushed it back. I think it was actually when Dr. Fuddy died in December.
Sure.
That was just too big a coincidence for me.
That's when the woman who, we don't know what her role in all of this was because, as you have said, she's dead, Loretta Fuddy. But she ended up being a member of a very strange cult that was centered out of Indonesia. And she is the woman who we believe gave either the PDF file or a piece of paper, because that's never been accomplished, and she gave it to the attorney working for the law firm out of Seattle, Washington, that was the president's firm, who my belief says that she may have just made the flight and showed up, and they had the 401. They had already put together this forgery, and they just presented it, and she was just simply the beard, although other people believe she actually brought something back from Hawaii, but it came from Loretta Fuddy. And so you think when Loretta Fuddy was the only person who died in a plane crash?
That really bothered me.
Right.
It just seemed too coincidental. It just didn't set right with me.
Right.
And I looked again back at the birth certificate just to see, what was going on. And at that point, that's where I didn't really know that there was what they're calling the AP version of the birth certificate earlier, which the really super high resolution white one. I didn't know that one existed originally.
I didn't know it till the other day.
And that really, really, really is a huge, that's probably the biggest red flag out there. That thing should not exist.
I'm going to ask you to do this, Hillary. Tell the audience, because I found it out as well. There was another piece of paper besides the PDF. And now talk about that and how you know that, or why you believe that.
Well, it's basically on the internet also, and I've pretty much traced back a little bit of the story on it. And the problem is the story simply can't be true, and that bothers me.
When you say again, I hesitate to interrupt you, but because a lot of people have interest now in this story, but don't know the little bits and pieces.
Sure.
When you say there were two documents, or the original document, you think that was brought on the airplane?
I personally don't think it was. No.
I don't.
I really don't think it was.
I really don't either. But there are people that believe it. So, at this point, as I always say, no one no one's right, no one's wrong, because
Right.
we don't know the truth.
Exactly. Yeah,
So,
I sort of in my own heart feel that something was brought from Hawaii. I don't feel that it's what we see on the internet.
agreed.
I don't think that what we see was there is what we're seeing now,
Yeah,
what
and-
they
and
may
it's-
or may not have sent over.
And it's so hard to know
Exactly.
because the PDF birth certificate is so full of holes
Mm-hmm.
and such a forgery.
Yep.
And so what do you think got off the airplane?
My feeling is that whatever is really in Hawaii, and in my heart of hearts, I believe there is something in Hawaii. It's not what we're seeing, and there's just too much. You know, the whole conversation. It was Dr. Fukino who
Mm-hmm.
said on NBC Press with my Celeste Isakson, I guess, that she saw the document,
Mm-hmm.
and it was half typewritten and half handwritten and properly signed.
And this is all typed with the
This is
exception
100% typed.
with the exception of the 3 signatures.
Mm-hmm. But she mentioned half typed, half handwritten, and properly signed, indicating that whatever was half handwritten was different than the properly signed. So what she saw in her files is not what we're seeing on the internet. It's not what we're seeing on WhiteHouse.gov. It's not what they were handing to the press, which is what I call the high-resolution white copy is the press copy that was handed to the AP press. So
Here we are. Here
none
we
of
are
them, I
again.
think, what's actually there.
Good morning, everyone. This woman's kind enough to be with us again early. The Who is Barack Obama story again. The drumbeat gets louder and louder and louder. Yesterday we spoke with people from this new book called From Forgery to Treason, and these guys are document examiners, and they believe they have found at least 20 points of forgery on Barack Obama's, they call it the Certificate of Live Birth. Everyone calls it the COLB. And you believe that as they believe, by the way, I should say to you, they believe there's another paper too.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we can go over the birth certificate, but I think people have heard so much of this, including, father's race being African and, all the rest of that, politically correct gobbledygook that never would have occurred in 1961.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think has happened? Or what do you, here, let me start that again. I apologize. How did all of this happen? Maybe that's a better way.
Originally, I think when he was pushed to provide a birth certificate, because of the fact that it's just confusing where he's actually from. He couldn't do it because there's something that they have on their paper in Hawaii that he doesn't want us to know.
I agree.
And the problem, that's, I guess, my main thing right now. I don't care whether he's from Hawaii right now. I just want to know the answer to that question. What is really in Hawaii?
Yeah, along with about 100 other questions. But let's start again. So, I mean, it's the same question when people come to all of his other manuscripts and all of his other grades and all of his other documents and credentials. They're all suppressed.
Right.
So I come back to that question. Why is every single thing about Barack Obama, his life credentials, why are they suppressed?
That's absolutely terrifying question to ask. Because odds are, whatever it is, we don't want running our country.
I'll go you another one. Everybody, and I've spoken with as many people as we can, probably about, I'm going to say 75% of people like yourself have appeared on this radio show. And I get to ask this question. I always ask, who is Barack Obama? And I always preface that by saying anybody that says they know, I know isn't telling the truth. I don't know what the true story is, but the true story is not the story that's being told. How's that?
I think that's exactly true. And the fact that we can find so many different stories is scary.
All right, let me put you in a Wayback Machine. How many different life stories do you believe he's told?
Oh, throughout his life? I mean, I know he was telling people in his high school that he was from Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
He said he was an Indonesian prince or something like that.
Yep.
I know his people in Occidental College had a different story of where he was, and he was Hawaiian royalty or something at that point.
And he's pulled that royal card before, yeah.
Yeah, so he's obviously got some kind of I want to be royal.
Mm-hmm.
Look how he's worked that out. I think in college, if he was even in Columbia, I mean, there's a lot of questions on that.
So assume that he was. How does a kid with a C average and
Get to Harvard.
get into Columbia first?
Well, yeah.
So I've been spending a lot of time with some people who I don't know if they're willing to come forward yet, but I'm sure in the next couple of weeks, months, perhaps they will. But it's believed that Barack Obama has written and changed his own bio 5 to 6 times over 18 years. I mean, that's amazing. Making changes, never removing the born in Kenya until, you know this, until it was about 2 months after he announced he was running for president. April 2007, he changed to born in Kenya to born in Hawaii.
Yep.
I mean, that's amazing. That you would think that the Nightly News with Brian Williams would like that story.
You'd think they would, wouldn't
Nah,
you?
forget about it. All right. So here's the you know that he, according to another bio, Obama claimed now that he was raised also in Chicago, and he's put down born. I mean, that's all these bizarre things, but now he put Chicago as a connect in there. And of course, what everyone always thought was, why did he go after coming out of law school? Of all the places in the world that he had lived or been, why did he go to Chicago?
I think he has some connections we probably would be frightened to know about.
Frank Marshall Davis.
Mm-hmm.
He is he has said he was raised in Chicago, and he has said he was raised in Indonesia and Hawaii. But all of a sudden, as someone said, that he just wants street cred in Chicago, so he put raised in Chicago.
Yeah, I think he says what he wants to say for the situation.
All right, so who is the guy?
Yeah, whoever he says he is at the moment is what he expected to believe that.
When you sit down with friends and they say to you, all right, after all of this work that you've done, who is Barack Obama? How do you answer that?
You know, that's scary. I think what is hard for all of us to understand is it's probably deeper than we even can comprehend.
Example.
Like, I think we just, as Americans, we just don't think this stuff can happen. I think there's an enormous either Muslim/communist background. I think the communist background is fairly evident and fairly well woven throughout.
You know, as crazy as that sounds, you know, those are
sounds crazy.
those are the primary influences in his life.
Exactly. Muslim, Islam, and communism would be his primary background.
They truly are. And I mean, you can throw a lot of other curveballs in there, but I've come to the conclusion, I'm trying to write some of this stuff myself, and he has written his own bio and changed it 5 to 6 times over 18 years. Over a 16-year time period, he's edited his bio 3 times. And never removed born in Kenya until he announced he was running for president in April 2007. And he changed it to born in Kenya to born in Hawaii.
Because at the time, I think it became important to be not born in Kenya. I think prior to that, it maybe was serving him well to be born in Kenya.
Oh, sure. I mean, because that makes
him a little different.
Yeah. And don't you think that's why you can't see Occidental Records or Punahou School or anything else, because he's claiming to be either a dual citizen or a foreign national? And I think that explains the Social Security number too, is that there's a set aside Social Security in the system. There's a set aside number that you get if you're working in the United States as a foreign national or whatever it is, and that's why he had to take that Connecticut SSN from that guy that died, because he can't show you a real one,
right? Because
the real one would say what he was claiming to be.
Yeah, and you're right. I think there was a lot. I think he went as a foreign student to schools. I think he got foreign aid. I think there could have been a lot of that kind of stuff.
Or who paid?
Yeah, either the government paid. As a foreign student, he would have gotten foreign aid. It could have been any of these people that have been backing him all these years, and we don't know who they are.
One of the things that's chasing me right now is Obama moved to Chicago when he's 26 years of age, and begun to say that he had been raised in Chicago. He was around 34, and he changed the bio to say he was raised in Indonesia, Hawaii, and Chicago. He added Chicago in. Because I know people say he needed street cred because he was running for Illinois State Senate. God, this is crazy. You know what? I got to tell you something. When I sit down with the normal people of my life who, think I'm a crazy person. And I start to say this to them. You watch their eyes.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And they go, no, that's not true. And I go, sure it is. And then you show them the docs.
Right.
And they go, well, and then you can see them start to stutter and their eyes start to flutter. And, and then finally they go, boy, this is bizarre. And I say, yeah, it's bizarre. So who is he?
That's what I guess we all really, really want to know. We really all want to know.
All right. So here's a really lousy question. So he used a fake ID to get on the ballot and won the White House. I mean, I'm like people said, get your tinfoil hat off and look at the real evidence. There is no bona fides for this guy. There's none. There's no there's no bona fides to the guy.
Nothing.
We're both crazier than hell. You know that.
Oh, exactly.
I mean, you and I are crazy.
My tin hat has feathers on it, so yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's a grifter. He faked his way into the White House. God, does that sound crazy?
It does. And what I feel like, my mother even says, now my mother's born and bred Republican, and she's one of the smartest people I know. Her answer was, oh, they can't do anything because then they'd have to, take back all the things he's done in the last 6 years and blah, blah, blah. And my point on this is, why can't we just get him for federal fraud? ID fraud.
I mean, I don't even want to get him for anything.
You don't have to impeach him. Just arrest him and get him out for fraud.
Hang on a second. Well, I need to, as the man always says, you need to pay the bills. You are, as promised. I'm going to tell you something, and you tell me what you think. We have gathered through this radio station, and I was on a radio station till like the end of last June, and I got bounced. I got fired, but for a decade now, I've been doing these shows, and I've put together like this enormous card catalog of people like yourself. Would it really be cool to have, and I've been kicking this with everybody, to have like a like they do in academics or the academia, as they say, the academy, and people gather all kinds of astrophysicists or gather all kinds, and then they present a paper. And we're really trying to reach Donald Trump because I think he's the only guy that could underwrite this. I certainly can't do it. And gather all the, Jerry Corsi and, just people like yourself, Linda Jordan. I go down a list of, wonderful people that we've met. Put everybody in a huge auditorium, have people present papers and do panels and, show evidence and come to some kinds of conclusions. Now, I know the news cameras would never go in that room, but God, wouldn't that be a gift?
It would be fantastic because, and one thing I just thank God for is the Internet. None of this really could have happened before the Internet.
Internet and talk radio.
Yep,
and 99% of talk radio has run out into the tall grass about this. They can't handle it because people call them racist and they fold. So it's crazy stuff. Hang on a second. I'll bring you right back, okay? Hang on. As promised, okay? It's Wednesday morning, March the 19th. Our website this morning, and I love this young guy. He's been so great to me over time. I've known him. He and my daughter went to school together. Ken Clark at the Fox 31. Have you seen this video at Fox? It's crazy. And they show something, and it's getting all the attention, and they've downed it. We have it. Great work by Mr. C, Mark Crowley. The Fox video, when it shows a part of the male anatomy, the Islamic executions, corruption in Philly, the Common Core article, that's the Duncan story, we did that. And you can take the exam online, the Common Core exam line online, the Fuddy video, the forgery to treason yesterday, and the truck and the biker chick. 55 will be the high today, right back after this. The continued quest for just who is Barack Obama. One person always gives us the next one. The next one always gives it someone else. This is Hillary Pete. And Miss Pete lives in the Northeast. And we are looking at Barack Obama's so-called documents, as people call them, and all of it. I mean, just every single thing about, first of all, the birth certificate. Good documents examiners have realized that there's at least 20 points of forgery on Barack Obama's certificate of live birth. Now, what Ms. Pete is talking about, well, are just things in general, but things in particular. And again, what you said, something triggered you to begin, like so many other people, to realize that this is just a scam. This entire life story is a sham. And what was that moment again for you, Ms. Pete?
Well, for me, it was when Dr. Loretta Fuddy was killed, oddly, in that strange plane accident in Hawaii in middle of December. and she was the person who had technically verified the existence of all his documentation, his birth certificate, and the fact that she's just died in this unusual manner really upset me. It just didn't seem right.
And she turns out to be a member of the strange Indonesian cult.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, we know that Stanley Ann Dunham, Obama Satura, whatever her name was or is, she was there at the same time. I mean, the whole thing is just, I mean, it's really a Stephen King novel.
It's you know, they say truth is stranger than fiction. I mean, it does sound like a book. It really does. You know, and killed in a plane crash, and then there's these mysterious divers under the water that show up in the video, and you know, it gets weirder and weirder.
So, what do you think? What do you think the life story really is? Where do you believe he was born?
I think he probably myself. I think he was born in Hawaii.
I do as well. Next step.
I don't think Barack Obama is his real father.
I don't either.
So I think that's what's being covered somehow. They don't either. There's something on that real birth certificate that they just are hiding.
Do you believe his father is Frank Marshall Davis?
That's a very strong possibility.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, you just do that. You just go, I don't know. The next one is, well, I mean, do you believe he was 2.5 years of age and he went to the airport with his mommy to say goodbye to Daddy?
Absolutely not.
I agree.
Absolutely not.
All right. Let me see. I don't know where you go from there. I mean, what do you think happened when he went to Indonesia?
You know, he's got his school records there that says he's an Indonesian citizen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he does have that. That's in the story that you can't go to that school, which is a fairly exclusive school, without being an Indonesian citizen.
Yeah.
His paperwork says that. He has that odd name that's on one of the passport things that his mother was filling out. It's just this odd, you know, it's a Sobarka.
Mm-hmm. I remember when Jerry Corsi, who has become a dear friend through all of this, who was beaten all over his body many times by the progressives, called a racist and a liar, and he came up with that name. Like, I remember I was working on the old job at Brand X, and he came up, he said, Peter, we got this new name, Soy Barca. And I remember, oh my God, they were pulling their hair out. There were springs coming out of their heads. Turns out, bigger than hell, there was another name, wasn't there?
And no one's explained what that one is at all. You know, it's got an Indonesian suffix or whatever, prefix. S-E-O-S-O-E is an Indonesian something. Barca looks to me like some version of Barack. And almost looks like that's an Indonesian version of his name that he was using or given.
There's a very awful part of this, and it's nude pictures of a very young Stanley Ann.
Yeah, that's odd.
Taken by, I believe, Frank Marshall Davis. I know when those guys went out and they went to that house and they looked at the floorboards and what's called, let me see, because they told me that it's called it'll come to me, but it's the part where the wall meets the floor. Cove, that's what it's called. And where all of these are identical, the floors and everything match. And from the house that Frank Marshall Davis lived in, and it's very, and by the way, Frank Marshall Davis was a pornographer. Do you think that, I mean, that's her, and that's Frank Marshall Davis taking the pictures?
Yeah, I think that's very odd, very strange, you know.
Yeah.
Probably very telling.
And according to this new criticisms that I've been reading, the mom seemed to like Muslim men. I don't think she ever married his dad, but his dad was a Muslim. The guy she did marry was a Muslim, or Muslim, as people say. They did go to Indonesia, and both of them were terrible alcoholics, by the way. And that's what killed Senior.
Right.
And God only knows. I mean, so, all right, so who is his mother? I mean, in the terms we know, his mother, Stanley Ann Dunham, but who is she?
Yeah, that's why I feel like people really can't understand it, because probably whatever's going wrong with this person has gone wrong for 50 years. You know, it probably does go back to his mother. It probably goes back to his grandparents. I mean, they were apparently very active in communists at the time.
Yeah, they were.
You know, and to the point where they moved to Hawaii just out of the blue, and you know, to be with, I don't know, it goes back that far.
People use the term red diaper baby.
Yeah. It's almost like he was born into this, and he's been brought to this position by a lot of people behind the scenes.
If we assume that it's a grift or a forge or it's a con, how many people had to be in on this con since the beginning? I remember when he was nominated for president here in Denver, and they immediately took all the stuff over, and they just had it instantly. It was notarized, and no one asked a question about, are you really who you say you are? And I've been told from people that I really respect and are in Washington, D.C., who say, geez, everybody knows that this story's not true. And I always say, well, why doesn't somebody ask? Are people simply afraid of being called a name?
Yes. And I think that's really sad because, if something's wrong, to me that is racism. If you're allowing somebody to do something because of their race, that is racism.
Or because of fear.
Right. We're afraid to say anything that we would say normally.
That he has made on his literary agent's website that said born in Kenya. It said so for 16 years. Why isn't that important to Brian Williams?
That I think it's some kind of a collusion, partially. I think that's a good question because it seems to me that should be out there.
How is this going to end?
In my dreams or in reality?
You pick.
I really hope that this can come out somehow. And I think right now America is ticked off enough at him over other things. I just wish they could find a way to say he defrauded us. And, if I had an employee who defrauded me or who lied to me or who gave me false documentation, I would fire them.
Well, I think so, too. I think as his stock in trade goes down, although the mainstream press continues to lionize and support him, but maybe you'll hit what some people call a tipping point. And then those topics ranging from the state and federal laws, that the evidence covering everything from the typing and the line spacing and the letters and everything, the registrar's stamp and the seals on a birth certificate, maybe somebody would step up on a 60-minute spot and say, hey, look at this. Don't count on it, though, right?
Not right now, but public-wise, the people I talk to on the street, I mean, they're so annoyed, they're so upset at what he's doing. I have a pen and I can wield it. I mean, he's scaring people. People are scared of him now.
All right.
And he's a wild card, and we don't know where he's going and what he's doing.
So who is he?
He has he has really changed America, which I think was his plan.
That's so crazy. It's the Manchurian Candidate, isn't it?
It really is starting to feel that way because the way we're heading, it's questionable. Can we pull it back? If he's got 3 more years in office, can we pull this back?
Some people have made the case that we have evidence of either Grandma Tootengramps lying as far back as elementary school in this pattern of his life. In other words, when he gets to Punahou, and I think he's probably 10 or 11 years of age, and the same story about Obama pops up at Occidental College, and the classmates say it wasn't a harmless tale from a kid with a fanciful imagination. It was a generated story.
Right.
Do you buy that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think they've been making up his life story since he was born.
The one young woman, or now an older woman, who has emerged is a woman by the name of Kristen Caldwell. Do you know who she is?
I've read the name, yeah.
He told her, now remember, this is elementary school, but he told kids at Occidental College, and this is all new stuff to me, that he said, I'm Kenyan royalty. Sometimes he was an Indonesian prince, correct?
Correct, yeah, great. What a guy.
And I will rule in Indonesia someday? Now, Kristen Caldwell went to school with Obama at Punahou from the 5th grade till they graduated. And I'm reading her the night before last. She said, I quote you, he told us that his father was an Indonesian king. He was a prince. And after he finished school, he was going to be back and be the ruler in Indonesia. I absolutely believed him. I understand that he told that story since the 5th grade, but that he was Kenyan royalty.
Hmm.
I heard that story from my sister years later.
Wow.
I mean, isn't that cool?
So he just wants to be royalty.
Well, a similar story about Obama popped up at Occidental. That he told us the kids the same story, that it's like this pathological stuff. By 11, he was pretty practiced. If someone drilled that story into him, but I've only come across this number of witnesses who said, "Oh yeah, he told us he was Kenya royalty, and sometimes he was an Indonesian prince." I mean, he's a kid, but yeah, I know.
Expect that from a 5 or a 6-year-old, if they live in Wonderland and but when you start to get even 11 or 12, I mean, then it starts to get a little funky.
No, well, yeah, he's older than that. He's 16, 17 telling that story.
Even then it's worse because now it's a practiced, knowledgeable misstatement.
I'm serious. By the way, to
fantasy.
the audience, I'm serious. It's a heart attack. He said these things.
Yeah.
Now, again, I was an Irish prince as a kid. I was going to be the white trash prince of Western Pennsylvania.
Hey, there you go.
There you go. But, this raised in Chicago story has now come up. And he needed some street cred, that he was a homeboy from Chicago. And, of course, I think he went to Chicago because of none other than Frank Marshall Davis.
Yep.
I don't know, lady. I just go,
No,
I don't know.
It just goes on and on, I know.
Yeah, but the new stuff is good. I mean, the new stuff is good about the born in Kenya stuff he's been saying for a long time, and then he quit saying it. But I love the Indonesian prince stuff. That was new to me. And the Kenyan royalty.
He had a plan, I guess. He's he got to the top of the United States, so now he's American royalty.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to take one more strong break here, and when we come back, Hillary, just again, I didn't get a chance to say, but how does this end, and will it end? And everybody, hang on your hats. We got a good show this morning. I love her. She's great. I mean, there are some people now that are growing a pair, and they're starting to come out and say, well, wait a minute, he said this, he said that. This woman's wonderful, and we will add her to our ever-growing list of investigators into the life of Barack Hussein Obama, Saturo Sirabaka, name it and claim it, Barry Saturo. And the guy's just an interesting chameleon-esque, but did he con his way in? Is it a grift? Hillary Pete is our guest. So, how does it end?
How does it end?
Yeah.
Sadly, if nothing big happens, it's just going to go on as it is. If the mainstream media doesn't want to get in on this, if the Congress doesn't want to look into it, if they're not going to, I don't know who else can call it up.
I'm not so sure. I mean, I have a vulture's eye view of most things, but I really do believe that this drumbeat gets louder and louder, particularly as his likability factor drops. And the place, the time is going to come when, I don't know if these guys are so invested in the illusion that he is who he says he is, or that somebody is going to say, gee, maybe that's enough. Maybe we ought to really ask the right questions.
Well, there are, I guess, about 3 court cases right now that are still in process.
Yep.
And they're on the verge of coming up with some kind of verdict. And, just one of them would come up with we have a problem. Maybe the press would look at that. I know the Hill Pio group, they're claiming they have something they're going to release soon.
Yep.
I would hope that's true. Maybe it's in conjunction with these court cases.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that as well. We're in contact with those guys all the time. And I'm waiting to see what they say. Because Sheriff Joe can get attention. The guy that can really get the attention is Donald Trump. And we're trying every which way but loose to try and at least get a 2-second phone call and say, why don't you put this together? But one of the things we're thinking about doing here at 710 is doing it on the air. Doing it in platooning, different 3 or 4 people at a time, having everyone listen on the internet, which of course we all now can, and maybe trying to do a virtual seminar. That's my, I'm down to that. I was thinking about that the other night, that we can do that now with the ability to see one another and, the ability to Skype and do everything we
Right.
can do, that we could really do it. I mean, we could get the 20 or 25 people that I respect, you being one of them, and say, okay, let's find out, change my thinking if you can, that it isn't a con.
Yeah, because I think you're right about the tipping point. I think it may be very close to that, and it would just take one thing, I think, to get it over. Like someone in Colombia would open up a file drawer and hand some paper over.
Yeah,
That's all it would take.
Yeah, that says, well, gee, he was claiming, and by this time, he is an adult. He's not a kid.
Right.
Or that he's claiming that he is Indonesian or Kenyan or a combination of both things or three things or whatever he thinks he was getting away with. And was he there, as many people suggest or suspect, he's a foreign student.
Yeah, and I guess that there's a thing that if he had been Indonesian and by his mother, if she just said, okay, he's adopted, he's Indonesian. He had a choice at some point as an adult to say, no, I don't want to be Indonesian.
Just
And
straighten
that's
it
his
out.
right, and he could do that.
Sure.
However, if he used that citizenship for any kind of gain, that means he accepted it. So if he used that citizenship for gain in a school situation, that means he's accepted the Indonesian citizenship.
And I believe,
as an adult.
I believe he's done it again and again and again.
In which case that is a dual citizen, and he is absolutely ineligible.
And what Social Security number I think would be a total giveaway.
Right, and that's another case that it's on the edge of maybe coming through. It's in Maryland, I think, right now,
That's right.
that they may actually push that out and just get that little card. And his selective service card is probably the most blatant forgery I've probably ever seen in my life. I mean, anybody with eyeballs can see that's
Sure.
a forgery.
And we do have the Barack Obama, his bio, back when he says Barack Obama, and he wrote this himself, the first African-American president of the Harvard Law Review, born in Kenya, raised in Indonesia and Hawaii. There it is.
Yep.
He said. He said.
And that's his bio, and they're trying to claim, oh, no, we wrote it. No, they didn't write it. No one believes that.
Yeah, he wrote it.
They can say that all they want, and there's not an author in the world who doesn't write their own bio and doesn't read their own bio.
Yeah.
It's just
I just wrote an article for a paper, and I had to write my own bio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just standard procedure. It's just what you do as an author.
Listen, I will speak again in about 2 weeks, and we'll be in touch with you if we put this together as a digital seminar.
Excellent.
And may do it on a Saturday, and we take some technical work here that I don't have the skills to do, but the team does, and we'd certainly have you part of it.
Sure.
Thank you for taking an hour out of your day to be with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you. Hillary Pete.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.